Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Dayspring Discussions. I'm your host, Sean McGahee, and this is a show where we talk about movies, TV, sci-fi, fantasy, and comic books. Hope you're having a great day on this Thursday afternoon. I am just kind of relaxing here at the old homestead. I got the day off from work, did a couple things in the morning, ran a couple errands. Now I'm ready to sit back, relax, and bring you this lovely podcast. On today's show, I'm going to talk about something I've been meaning to talk about for a couple weeks now. Finally got the chance to do it, so I'm just going to kind of ramble on for a little bit. And you guys fire back on social media and the Gmail account. Let me know what you think about what I'm about to say, alright? So, Comic-Con was last month. And, a lot of good stuff came out. New trailers. We've talked about a lot of it here on the show. But there's one thing that came out that I haven't had a chance to talk about. And that was the Warner Brothers DC animated panel. So at Comic-Con last month, they showed a preview of the new animated movie they have going on, the Batman Harley Quinn movie. And that gave you kind of a little idea of what is coming up for DC animated films. It's their 10-year anniversary. They started off in 2007 with Superman, Doomsday, and kind of gone for there. And they're actually coming out with a 10-year pack of all the animated movies as well, from what I hear, where you can buy all of them together, which is pretty cool. They also talked about they're coming out with Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which is an old adaptation book, Elsewhere book, really, about an old school Batman hunting down Jack the Ripper back in, I think, English times, or whatever you call those times, early 1900s, 1800s, whatever Jack the Ripper was. And then they also talked about how they're going to do a official Suicide Squad animated movie, Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay. Whoop-de-doo, I can give two craps about that. But the one they announced that got me super excited is that they were doing a 2-part animated movie on the Death of Superman Returns storyline. So, for those of you who don't know, back in 2007, like I said, they did a more condensed version of the Death of Superman and Return of Superman with Superman Doomsday, where Superman fought Doomsday and died, and while he was gone, Lex Luthor had a clone of Superman running around posing as Superman, and then Superman came back and had to fight him, and that part story. So it's a very much more condensed version of what the actual storyline is. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, The Death of Superman came out back in 1992, and it was kind of a multi-story arc from his death to his return. Started off with the death of Superman, and then it went on to Funeral for a Friend, then the Reign of Superman, Return of Superman, and then technically there's a 5th part to it, which is called Superman Doomsday, but I'll get into that for a sec. But it looks like what they're going to do over at Warner Brothers Animation is you get the first part of the story, The Death of Superman, that's going to come out in 2018. Then in 2019, they're going to come back with the second half of the story, which is the Reign of the Superman. So for those of you not familiar, like I said, you had The Death of Superman, where Superman fought Doomsday in the comic books and died. Then you had Funeral for a Friend, where the whole world, mourned for him and tried to get along without him. Then you had the Reign of the Superman, where 4 people tried to take Superman's place. 2 of them actually posing as Superman, and that introduced us to the characters of Steel, a new Superboy, Cyborg Superman, and a reimagined Eradicator. And like I said, they did a more condensed version of this in Superman Doomsday, but they didn't talk about any of these 4 characters. After the Reign of Superman, you had the Return of Superman, which is a much smaller part. Really can be roped into the Reign of the Superman, I guess. But people consider that, the Return of Superman. And then after that, there's another part called Superman Doomsday, which is not really part of the original storyline. It's a separate storyline. But it's where Superman kind of is dealing with the aftermath of his fight with Doomsday, almost post-traumatic stress syndrome, and wanting to know more about Doomsday. So we learn Doomsday's origins, and basically Superman has to face his enemy once again to get over his fear from his last battle with Doomsday. So I don't think they're going to get that last part, but they're definitely going to do the first 4 parts in this animated series, and I gotta say I'm excited about it, mainly because I remember the day that Superman, The Death of Superman, issue number 75 came out. Now, being a kid, I didn't know, it's always just a marketing gimmick, a ploy. But I remember going to the comic book shop that day, and they had them in plastic bags with the red Superman symbol that was kind of like dripping blood almost. And it was very interesting. The comic book store was packed. Everyone was buying comics, and a lot of people bought that comic thinking that it was going to be valuable someday. I myself have a copy of it still in my comic book box, not thinking it's going to be super valuable, but really kind of just for the nostalgia sake of it, kind of what it meant to the comic community, and all people who would never buy a comic in their life went to their local comic book store or wherever and bought this comic. Now, this is also the part too that really got me into Superman. When anyone who knows me I'm a pretty big Superman fan, and if anyone asked me where my Superman love started, it was at the death of Superman. I was 9 years old when that comic came out, so I was still pretty young. But since then, I have been following Superman, not always collecting, but always keeping up. I mean, after the death and the return, you had, the death of Clark Kent, you had the fall of Metropolis, etc., New Krypton, all that stuff. So I've, kept up and read Superman ever since, and the death of Superman was kind of where my interest in Superman started. So I'll definitely give that credit to that book. But it also spawned up a lot of different things, not only in the Superman storyline, but also in the comic community, because it was not the first time that a superhero had died, but the superhero, Superman, was gone. And it really started something that I think, in my opinion, doesn't go so well, which is the death of superheroes and the fast resurrection of them. Superman died, and then within a year or so, he was back. I don't say it was a bad idea, because I really enjoyed that storyline. To this day, I still read the death, reign, and all that stuff. But it spawned something where nowadays you have these heroes that die or allegedly die, and they're coming back within a couple months, not even a couple months. You had the alleged death of Batman, and then Captain America and the Human Torch, and their deaths were so quick. I mean, you blinked and it was, they were back. Now, speaking with this storyline, like I said, I think it introduced some really good characters that I think have stuck around for a while. They're still in the Superman lore today, and I think because they were good characters. Starting off, we'll just go with the story's villain. Cyborg Superman was actually an older villain, Hank Henshaw's, of Superman's, and he kind of posed as him and used that to wreak havoc on Coast City, which was Green Lantern's hometown, and kind of started Hal Jordan on the path to Parallax, really, when he did that. So then directly contributes to Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern storyline, and kind of complexities in that story as well. Just in the most recent Rebirth title, Cyborg Superman was out to get Clark Kent. And, that's something that stuck around. He's a good character. He pops up from time to time. And I think a great foil for Superman, and possibly Green Lantern as well, because he popped up in there too. You also have the Eradicator, who is started off not really a villain per se. He was a good guy, but over time he's become a villain. Mainly he's all about preserving Kryptonian heritage and technology and the world of Krypton. And again, in the recent Superman story, he teamed up with Cyborg Superman and several other villains against the Man of Steel, mainly because he found out that Clark had married Lois and they had had a son, and he was upset that he felt like Kal-El was diluting the pure Kryptonian bloodlines, and that's why he teamed up with Cyborg Superman. Another character, John Henry Irons, Steel, as it will, after the reign of Superman and the return and all that, he was one of several characters who got his own book, and I rather enjoyed it. The character, the reason he became a hero was that Superman saved his life once upon a time, and to honor him, he made his own iron suit, and to protect the people. You might have seen the old Shaquille O'Neal movie called Steel. If you didn't, don't worry, you didn't miss anything. In fact, your life is probably a little bit better because you have not seen that stinking pile of garbage. But anyway, moving on, the book itself, Steel, was actually pretty decent. Lasted quite a long time. And the hero, after the events of the return of Superman, returned to his hometown of DC and still used that suit, that persona, to take on crime in the nation's capital. The one character probably out of this that I most have followed is Superboy. When he got his own spin-off afterwards, I was a big fan of that. Obviously, I was, a kid, so Superboy was appealing to me. Plus, he was cool. I remember me and my friends who all read the comic, we got the Superboy haircut that he had at the time, too. Try to get the sunglasses, the whole thing. We thought he was pretty cool. But for those of you not familiar with the character, because you obviously haven't watched Young Justice, he is a clone of half Superman, half Lex. Basically, when Cadmus was trying to create Superman or clone Superman, they couldn't fill in all the Kryptonian DNA, so they filled it in with human DNA, and they used Lex Luthor's DNA. So he's kind of half Clark and then half Lex in that frame, which is why he doesn't have all the powers that Superman does. But he's an interesting character. After that, he joined up with Teen Titans in Jeff Johns' run, along with the third Robin, Tim Drake, and Kid Flash, aka Bart Allen, and they had a great friendship going on. If you have not checked out Jeff Johns' Teen Titans runs, probably one of my favorite, definitely one of my top 50 comic book runs or 10 comic book runs or whatever. It's great. You need to check it out. But I followed that character. He had a great storyline. They kind of got rid of him in the New 52 wake back in 2011 or 2012, I believe it was. And they brought in another Superboy, which essentially was the same one, but just basically revamped his origin. And I did not like him nearly as enough. In fact, I kind of hated him because I was so attached to the character of Connor Kent. And what they did to him in the newer 52 is horrible. He hasn't shown up yet in Rebirth, which I'm fine with because there is a new Superboy, Jonathan Kent, a.k.a. Lois and Clark's child. And I like him. I like his title with Damian Wayne, the new Robin, in Super Sons, and I think he's got some good stuff ahead of him. I do miss the characters of Connor Kent, a.k.a. Superboy, but for now, I'm fine with the way it is. So much like DC or Warner Brothers wanting to do a Flashpoint live-action movie, I want them to do it right. I want them to do the death and return of Superman correctly. And breaking into 2 movies, I think definitely shows promise that they're looking to do the full story in it. I can see that they can do that first movie being the death of Superman and funeral for a friend, leading up to the reign of the Superman when all 4 Supermen come in, and then you have the reign of Superman and the return of Superman in that second movie. It's a great story. I mean, like I said, I was a kid when it came out. I still love reading it. It's got great characters, great story. I think it could be something really special if done right. And given how the DC Warner Brothers movies, I think, have been pretty good, I'm a fan. Especially since the Flashpoint Paradox. Ever since then, I think they've really been on point. I wasn't a big fan of, was it Justice League Doom? I think the name of it was. What was the name of that one movie they did right after? Let me look here. Hold on. I'm thinking of the wrong one here, guys. Hold on. It is Justice League. Nope, that's not it. Where did it go? Justice League War. That's what it was. Sorry, guys. So yeah, after they did Flashpoint, I think they did a good one. I love the current Batman run they have with Son of Batman, Batman vs. Robin, and Batman Bad Blood. I also enjoyed the recent Justice League Dark. Not a huge fan of Titans, the Judas Contract. I am looking forward to Batman and Harley Quinn, mainly because It reteams Bruce Timm with the original Kevin Conroy voice of Batman, and it's the other gentleman who did the Nightwing voice in the Batman animated series. But yeah, the Sink, it's a good story. If you haven't read it, you know, if you don't want to read the comic, there's a book version of it too. I don't know if the book is as good as the comic version, but it's an epic tale. If you go from the death of Superman through the return of Superman, and even kind of what I call the epilogue, which is Superman Doomsday, it's definitely something that is kind of epic in tone, and probably still to this day one of the top 5, if not the top Superman story to read, in my opinion. So that's why I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they do with it. I hope they do it right, and it's kind of what it comes down to, because it is such an epic story to tell. It's one that I think deserves to be told, and I think can be done right. Now, given that, much like their live-action universe, they're doing kind of a DC animated shared universe with their movies, with the Batman movies and the Justice League movies. I'm curious if they do introduce the other Superman, such as Superboy, Steel, Cyborg Superman. Is that going to go over and continue in the Justice League movies and all the other movies, continuing that shared universe? I think it'd be fun, actually. I would be excited, especially, again, like I said, I'm a fan of the Superboy character in this, aka Connor Kent, and I would love to see him go through a whole full story arc in this animated world that they've created with that. So, but that's it, guys. That's all I got to say about it. But let me know what you guys think. Hit me up, dayspringdiscussions@gmail.com. Also, hit us up on the Facebook group or on Twitter. You can find me personally, Slim Dayspring 12, on Twitter and Instagram. And that's going to be it, guys. Till next time, may the Force be with us all.